We are also videotaping. So at this time, if you choose not to be taped, in terms of your image or your name, this is a good time to remove that. We will address questions right after each presenter. We will address like 1 or 2 questions, and then I will accumulate all the questions and we will get to them at the end. Whatever questions we don't get to, we will address them as at a committee meeting, and then we will contact you or the college community with a response. So if you want to receive an email personally, please drop that into the chat. Please remember that when you add anything into the chat, please do not add any student names due to privacy and legal issues. I also would like to welcome Louis Merchant, who's here. He's the Student Judiciary Officer. And if we will need to ask him a question, he's here, but we don't want to put him on the spot because he's here as as visiting us. But if we have any questions, we can then ask him, and we're happy that he's here. And now I will first turn it over to Valencia, and she will begin our presentation. And again, if you have questions, just put them in the chat.
Valencia?
Valencia, unmute.
Sorry, guys, forgive me. I was just trying to open up my screen.
No need for sorries.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the syllabus. I am a representative from Health Sciences, and I teach nursing. So we have our syllabus. We have that is designed for our LPNs that are going into an RN degree. Who has control of this? Yeah.
Janet.
Okay, so Janet does. When you want her to flip, just say next. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You got it.
Okay. So some of the things that I'm just going to touch on is our basic course information. So when we have a syllabus, we have to make sure that the student it's a contract between the student.
Elementary.
Pardon me? Okay, it's a contract between the student and the faculty member, the professor. So with this, we try to give the student as much thorough information as possible. So we'll give them basic course information. They'll have instructors' contact information. So you will have the instructor's email, you'll have their phone number, whatever other type of contact they may want to give you. That will include their office hours, their availability. For students, most professors will set up office hours in health sciences. We have at least 3 hours of office hours a week. So some professors may have an hour each day, or they may do all 3 in one day, depending on what their availability is. So that will be a part of the contact information. We give a course description, which is very important so that students can understand what exactly the course is. Sometimes you may say, oh, I'm taking a nursing course in fundamentals. What does that mean? We need to explain to you the fundamentals, introductory to nursing, and we want you to have a full description of that. What our learning objectives are. Our learning objectives will touch all of the things that we will do in, hello?
So Valencia, what will happen is you might hear some noise because some of our participants aren't muted. So you just sort of like, just act like you're a Broadway star. Keep it going.
Keep it going. Okay. So in our learning objectives, we will have an objective for each week, each class, each lecture. And those learning objectives are very important. They are specific to the lesson that is being taught for that particular class that day of the week. So those learning objectives, we are always aimed to meet them. It's important that we meet them so that the students will be able to get the full lesson that is in the curriculum. Textbooks and supplies, very important. We need you to know what textbooks are accepted and not accepted. Sometimes we have different editions. So if an edition has changed, there may be something specific in the new edition that is necessary. So sometimes students will say, oh, I have an old edition. You're on edition 12. I have 9. Can I use 9? So we will, you know, at that time, we will give you the information for what textbooks, what supplies. Supplies are important in nursing because nursing sometimes, well, we always have a lab. So sometimes the lab in a lecture, for instance, with the class that I teach, the RN, LPN to RN, it is a lecture/lab. So if there are certain supplies that are needed, if they need stethoscopes, if they need pen lights, things like that, we would have to make sure that they understand that in the syllabus. Because this syllabus is going to give you a description of everything that you need. It is thorough, everything that you need to be successful in the course. And our goal is for the students to be successful. Also, speaking of the textbook, sometimes we will have a required list and then we may have recommended. So in nursing, sometimes what we'll do, we always have a required textbook, but then we may also say, we recommend if you get a drug book, or we recommend this workbook, something in addition that may help your studies. Our grading criteria is very important. With our grading criteria, we are always looking at, with nursing, it's a specific grade across the department. So you can't say, oh, well, our passing grade is 74.5. So if a student says, oh, but I have 74.43, you know, we cannot alter from that because it is across the department. So the grading criteria is very important. How do we do this grading? Well, we do this grading mainly by testing, right? Exams, quizzes. We also come to grades by giving case studies. They have writing assignments. A lot of those writing assignments may be posted in ePortfolio. So these assignments will be a part of this grading criteria as well. And the other thing is that we always want the students to understand that with grades, you know, we don't penalize students when it comes to grades. Oh, you were late for the test, so we are going to take 2 points. If the test is a specific time, then during that time, you have that amount of time to complete the test. You're not penalized. Your grade will not penalize other than the fact that you didn't complete the test. And that wouldn't be a penalty. That would be just based on the time that you was allotted for the test and the time it took you to complete the test. So our course policies, attendance is very important in nursing. We allow maybe 1 or 2 in clinical for the absences. Clinical is based on the amount of hours that the student in laboratory, the amount of hours that the students actually participate. And so this is a state requirement. We can't make decisions based on, you know, well, the student had a rough time. We always want to be compassionate and we try to work very hard with the students. But because the state requires that you have a specific amount of hours to sit for the state boards, you must meet those hours. So if a student has excessive absences, we always offer withdrawal, and the syllabus will let you know when withdrawal deadlines are. If you withdraw within a specific amount of time and you repeat, what your grade needs to be in that next repeated class. So for instance, if a student fails and they make it to the end of the semester, then they come back, instead of needing a 75, that student that is repeating the full course would need a 78. However, if they withdraw within the withdrawal period, then they will come back and they will again need a 75. Again, with our policies, office hours are very important. It is college-wide. Every department, every faculty member must have office hours. And we do this because the students have a right to have time with us if they have any questions. Every question is not appropriate for the entire class. So we want to make ourselves available so that if the students need some time, and this, again, I said, is a college policy. Okay. Okay, great. So also the lateness falls into attendance again. So college policies, academic integrity, students with disabilities, these type of things are very important as well to nursing. Nursing integrity, ethics, extremely important. We do not discriminate or have any bias towards students that have disabilities. Some students may need extra time for test taking, and they are allowed that. We have a specific office for these students' affairs, and we will recommend the student to that office. And Johnny Nelson is the person that normally is in charge of that specific office. And we will recommend that student to get, extra time if needed. Okay, so we have a new, thank you. We have a new policy for recording, and a lot of this has to do with COVID-19, the way we have changed our method of teaching. So students can participate in class with their camera on or off. But we also have a policy that for recording. If the students are unwilling to consent to any video imaging or anything like that, we will comply. It's very difficult for us to teach on an online class when we have a lot of students with a lot of different ideas. Now, for instance, in nursing, if we are giving a test, all video cameras must be on. That's a part of our nursing policy. We have to proctor the exam. So if we're lecturing and the video's off, we're flexible. But if the video is, if the student is testing from Blackboard or from, we have a company, ATI, that we use for testing as well, the camera must be on. We must be able to proctor that student. So just if you can see what we have up here on the screen now, if you're not willing to consent to have your voice recorded during class, you would need to keep your button muted, and you can communicate via chat. So you will see on the Zoom on the Zoom screen, there is a chat button. You can always communicate with the professor through chat. The professor will see that a chat has come up because it usually tells you as many chats come up, it is numbered. And so we can see that, and then that way we can answer the chat appropriately. Okay, so in our syllabus, like I said earlier, I told you we have a course description, and in this particular class, it is called a bridge. So it's bridging the student from LPN to RN. And our content is basically medical, surgical nursing, and pharmacology. And so we put those two concepts together because medical, surgical nursing is mostly adult nursing. And so that's where you'll get diabetes, and you'll get hypertension, heart diseases, and those diseases and disorders are normally always associated with some pharmacological treatment. So we combine those two together, and the student understands this once they come into the class, but it is explained in our syllabus. And we have specific learning outcomes, and these outcomes are by standards with not just LaGuardia, but New York State Department of Education. We have to meet standards with them. We have to make standards with ASIN, which is our standard, our standards for quality and safety for education. in nursing, also the American Nursing Association. So the American Nursing Association is very important to nursing because they put our code of ethics, our standards, what we should do in nursing. The student has to understand this coming into nursing. So we are responsible for giving them the information about these learning outcomes so that they can be prepared once they complete the course. And our instructional method is always lecture, PowerPoint. We use case studies. We also use simulation in our labs. We use self-instruction modules. There is cooperative learning because nursing is a cooperative profession where there's always teamwork, always. So we teach the students early on in their studies that cooperative learning is very important because they have to use this in their professional life once they are graduated. We use study guides and quizzes as well. You can go to the next, please. So in our grading scale, in the registered nursing program, we have from A to F. Anything below a 74.4 is a failure. If it's a 74.5 and above, because we do round to the nearest tenth, 75 is passing, 74.4 would be considered passing. You need at least a C to pass. We put this in the syllabus so that the students can always refer to it as they are watching their grades going through the program, and that they understand, because sometimes a student would say, oh, I got 74.43, how could that not be? So we like to be very specific and very open with the students so that they can understand exactly what is expected of them in terms of grading. And we use examinations for evaluation. The examinations, there are 3 throughout the semester. They're 15% each, which equals 45%. They have a final exam for 25%. We have integrated testing, which I just mentioned, ATI. So ATI is a company that we use that helps with the NCLEX style questions. What is NCLEX? It is the national boards of testing. And so it's all over the country, but each state have their own guidelines. So we prepare them for this with an ATI integrated test. That integrated test would be a test that is comprehensive. So it would have everything that's pretty much been covered in the class, and they will get 5% for that. They get these QSIN assignments, they're case studies, they are, PowerPoints. We usually use ePortfolio for them to post. They get a wound care module, which is a part of the QSIN assignment as well. Now, this is a pass-fail. Okay, so it doesn't really weigh against their grade. The last part of their grading evaluation comes from pharmacology. They get a 10% grade for 10% of their grade for pharm midterm. Their pharm final is 10%, and then they get a standardized test, which is similar to the integrated test with ATI. So it's very similar. They get that test as a comprehensive, and that is 5%. And that will total their 100% of their grade. The final grade determination, all exams are cumulative, and any material that we previously covered in the course can be retested. So and for instance, in the first module, when we first start the course, we may talk about diabetes. When we do the final, we can go back and bring diabetes into the final, okay? Anything that was covered in the class in that particular semester can be retested. So we want the students to understand that. We don't want the students to feel that, oh, well, they have this this test that's up and they didn't know, they thought it was only going to be what was the last portion of the semester. The students must pass the theory, again, with 75%. That is a C. Also, they have to achieve a satisfactory grade for medication calculations. Now, that is not, that is sort of like a pass-fail. It's not included in the evaluation of the grade because we give them 3 chances. They have to get at least an 80 to show competency in medication calculation. And normally they will. And again, remember, these students are already LPNs, so they're not pretty much working in the field and they have already been administering medications. Okay, so just to sum up, the students also, if they receive less than a 70, there's no rounding as the final grade. We do not round, okay? Students that are repeating, again, I said they need to get a 78. We make that very clear to them because sometimes if they're repeaters, they wouldn't know. They think that they still have to get a 75 as part of the grading criteria in a normal setting. But because they are repeaters and they have gone through the entire course, they can sort of have a heads up on the other students. So they are required to have a C+ or higher in their final grade. ePortfolio is very important with nursing. We use it to put case studies on. These case studies can be shared. It's a very great learning experience for the student and for their classmates. So they have to do 3 reflections, and these reflections are personal reflections. These reflections are how do they feel about the lab or what they're going through in clinical, or how do they feel about the learning experience in medical surgical nursing. Is pharmacology and medical surgical nursing meeting the expectation of the student? You know, and they can just express themselves. It could be a many things. They can talk about many different aspects of their nursing experience.
All right, Valencia,
Yes,
thank you very much.
you're very
Um,
welcome.
we are now going to move to attendance policies unless someone has a question right now for Valencia. I don't see anything in the chat. So if you do, just populate it in the chat and then we can come back. But right now, what we'd like to do is turn it over to Lila. She will introduce herself and she will start with attendance policies. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lila Turke, and I'm a representative on this committee from the English department. And I will be talking about the attendance policies, specifically the changes and the news related to attendance and participation since remote learning has taken effect. So we can go to the next slide. So I am not sure how many of you, but hopefully most of you are aware that there is new guidance on attendance policy from CUNY related to remote learning. It is not our usual LaGuardia attendance policy of calculating hours and percentages of how many sessions students missed. That is not how we are determining attendance currently. Attendance pretty much kind of combined itself or embedded itself in participation. So it is as long as students show participation in various ways, that means that they have attended. So this is from a CUNY memorandum. I'll share with everyone the link where all these policies are to be found in a little bit. So attendance in remotely learning should be based on participation in academically related activities, and the emphasis is on participation. So what you're looking for is, has the student engaged your class in a meaningful way? And the memorandum points out a few ways in which this engagement can happen. One is physically attending a class, meaning, you know, if it's a lab session that happens on campus, but that's not very common. Also, it could be a Zoom or Blackboard meeting where there was direct interaction between the instructor and the student. Another one is submitting an academic assignment. Submitting an academic assignment means participation, means attendance. Taking an exam, an interactive tutorial or computer-based assisted instruction. or attending a study group that was assigned by the school. Next slide, please. Also, participating in an online discussion about the academic matter on the learning platform, engaging in an online academically related activity, or initiating contact with the instructor to ask a question about the academic subject studied. So all these ways, these are different ways in which the student can engage with the course. And when we determine attendance, we really determine the student's participation. And that is true for the beginning of the semester as well as throughout the semester. The important note, logging onto an online class does not, however, suffice. It's not sufficient in and by itself to demonstrate participation in an academically related activity by a student. So faculty can determine that a student has not participated in any other way, but simply logged in, and consider that as non-attendance. Here in the link, if you click on the link, you will see the language for participation and as attendance in the new CUNY memorandum. Next slide, please. So this kind of early participation and attendance is also basis right now for verification of attendance. We have had, I believe, from what I know from academic advising, a higher number of WN issues, which is the non-attendance grade that students get than we usually get, because usually in a face-to-face class, it's fairly easy. The student has come to class or has not come to class. In a remote learning environment, this becomes a little bit trickier. So the guidance is to use early on in the verification period, the participation/attendance memorandum that I just outlined. If the student has engaged in any meaningful way with the class, that means, or with the instructor, that means that they have attended. Therefore, they should not receive a WN grade. So in general, the verification of attendance is to identify students who have never attended, practically have not disappeared, but have never shown any kind of engagement with the class, as well as to identify those who have attended, of course, and have participated. The verification of attendance is extremely important because it has direct consequences for the student's enrollment status. Students who receive a WN will be withdrawn from the course by the registrar automatically. And so this has tuition implications and financial aid implications. The verification of attendance happens through CUNY first. We always get the email about it, usually a couple of weeks into each semester. The default setting is yes. So all the faculty needs to do is to change those students who have not in any way engaged with the class or with the instructor into a no. It needs to be submitted even if all students have shown up to class. Verification of attendance, if it has been recorded wrongly, can be changed. WN grades can be reversed, and faculty need to use the grade change form for that, which is in one of our course tools in the faculty center. So again, if you need to change the WN grade, then you can do that into reverse it via the grade change form. All right, next slide, please. All right, so I am hoping that most faculty here who are using LaGuardia's web attendance have seen that web attendance has been adjusted to reflect these new principles in attendance that are related to participation. I want to emphasize here that web attendance is a LaGuardia specific. It is not a CUNY software, not a CUNY policy. LaGuardia we take attendance for grading and evaluation purposes. So please be aware, as I'm sure you are, if you have filled out the web attendance so far in the semester, that there are new options to reflect the nature of remote learning. Now the 3 options, as opposed to present, absent, late, and excused, are online, offline, and excused. So if a student has been online and showed any kind of meaningful participation, that means that they should be marked as online, right? If the student has not in any way engaged with the instructor or the class in a meaningful way, they can be marked offline. A quick guidance here. It's better to record web attendance every week or every couple of weeks at least, rather than leave it to the end of the semester, because it is much harder, much more confusing for the faculty as well as the students. So just keep track of it throughout the semester. And actually, I think LaGuardia administration monitors how often web attendance is filled out. All right, so next slide. All right, so there is a new guideline requiring the use of cameras during live classes. I wanted to emphasize this because some of us may have overlooked it. So besides the policy related to recording a session, which should appear on your syllabus, if you plan to record any synchronous sessions, you need to put that synchronous recording policy on the syllabus that Valencia has outlined. Besides that, there is a very fairly clear guidance about whether we faculty can require or not the use of cameras during these live sessions. And the language of here, which is also on the website that I'm going to share with you, says clearly that faculty offering classes through web conferencing, digital technology like Zoom or Blackboard cannot require that students turn on their camera during live classes unless there is a pedagogical need to do so. There is, space for exceptions here, and I think Valencia mentioned a good example of an exception where, students are taking a standardized state test or some kind of a, really a kind of high stakes exam or high stakes discussion, right? Then you can make a pedagogical argument for having the students turn the camera on, but on a regular basis. And the norm is that faculty, for privacy issues, cannot require students to turn their cameras on. The smaller language here kind of elaborates on what it means to have that pedagogical need. In case of classes in which there is a pedagogical need to require the use of cameras, one, the requirement for students to be visible on the video should be communicated in advance. So students need to know before registration and enrollment in the class. Specifically, this will be important in Fall 2 and Spring 1. And students who do not have access to cameras and therefore are not able to comply with the requirement must be accommodated. Okay, so this is a new guideline that all faculty are supposed to be aware of. And I believe that's the end of my section.
So Lila, before
Yes.
we go to the next, we do have one question.
Yes.
Can you see it in the chat room or do you want me to read it?
Can I?
It's from Josephine.
Yes.
It says, I submitted the attendance verification, but students never reported are still on my attendance list. How do I take care of this? My web attendance does not refer what I communicated on my attendance verification roster.
Thank you for that question, Josephine. It's a good question. It happens every semester. Web attendance usually takes a little bit longer to catch up. So that means that students have not necessarily been unenrolled from the class yet. They will be unenrolled. And also, just a quick note here, based on my experience, and hopefully other faculty can confirm this, students who are withdrawn or withdraw from the class still show up on web attendance, but the buttons of online, offline, exempted will not be active. So you cannot click, but their images and their names will still show up throughout the semester. Okay, so that could also be a question. If they're still active and there is online and offline and so on, that means that they have not been unenrolled yet, or the registrar's information has not yet synced with the web attendance, but it will.
Okay.
We also have one other question.
Yes.
Could you please explain the difference between offline and online attendance one more time? This is
Yes, I'm
from-
happy to do that.
From
So
Maria.
the difference is pretty straightforward. Online means attended, offline means not in attendance. There is no such thing as offline attendance. If a student has not in a meaningful way engaged with the class in a day or over a week or however you're measuring, right? Whatever your measuring period is, that means they are offline. It replaced absent. Offline replaces absent. Online replaces present. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, that question came from Maria Antasari. Thank you very much. If we have no more questions for this segment, we will now proceed to academic integrity, but please feel free to add other questions and we will get to them at the end, or if not, we will make sure that we respond to you, after the workshop is over. So now we are happy to have Andrew, who will talk about academic integrity, and he will also introduce himself. Okay, Andrew, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Andrew McFarland. I teach in the philosophy program housed in the Department of Humanities. And I'm here to say a little bit about everyone's favorite topic, academic integrity and academic misconduct. No, people don't like talking about cheating. Well, unfortunately, bad jokes aside, it's something that happens, and it's a good topic to talk about since the remote teaching environment raises new questions and difficulties for how to report violations of academic misconduct and how to try and prevent cheating. So next slide, please, Janet. So we'll begin by just giving you a little bit of information about where you can find information about the policies regarding academic misconduct. If you have not done so, it's a good idea to go and check these out. So I'll leave it to you at your own pace to go and check out the policies regarding academic integrity. Reference to the policy should always be included in your syllabus. And importantly, it's important to make sure to enforce the policy. And I'll explain a little bit more in detail why that's the case. Next slide. So violations of academic integrity include things like plagiarism, using unauthorized notes during exams, or submitting the same assignment more than once. Or in some cases, consulting with other students during an exam period. So next slide, please. Okay, so a couple of things that you can do to try and prevent plagiarism. So what I've got on this slide, they're just suggestions. They're not to be taken as things that you are required to do, just a couple of suggestions or things to try and do. So one thing you can do to prevent plagiarism is try to design the assignment that's not plagiarizable. Easier said than done, right? For example, you might have a staged assignment, or you might have very specific instructions. You might, for example, report, but don't necessarily sanction. So for instance, you might fill out the academic integrity complaint form, but you might say there's not a sanction that comes along with the instance of cheating, so you might just try and scare the student. So filling out a form, for example, and then submitting it can kind of scare some people. But if it's an accident, for instance, there have been instances where I've had students who didn't realize that what they were doing counted as plagiarism or academic misconduct, and so you bring it to their attention, fill out the form. And that kind of is enough to make them go, okay, I realize that I did something wrong. But you don't think that what they did was something that necessarily was in need of a sanction. And so filling out the form serves that purpose instead. And also, similarly, you want to make sure that you provide information on plagiarism, what your plagiarism policy is in the syllabus, so that the students are made aware of what you'll do in the case of some form of academic misconduct. Next slide, please. You might also include instructions on proper citation and things like that. Okay, next slide. All right, other examples of ways that you can try and deter plagiarism, add a paragraph about it. about academic integrity in your syllabus. Some faculty members like to go so far as to include something like a line where the students sign and say that they've read the academic misconduct, academic integrity policy, and that they've understood it. One other suggestion from some faculty members, we sort of crowdsourced suggestions from faculty members on approaches that they've taken to deterring plagiarism and academic misconduct, is try to have a conversation with them to understand the conditions that might actually lead them to cheat in the first place, and then see if you can get them to understand why that's problematic. If you are into having the computer do the work for you, you might use a detection device to let students know that you're doing so. So SafeAssign, Turnitin, or you might simply Google suspicious sentences. As I like to remind my students, we also, as faculty members, do have access to Google as well. Next slide, please. So Blackboard integrates SafeAssign and Turnitin as apps that you can utilize within the course tools section of Blackboard. This is pretty handy because sometimes, so Blackboard and SafeAssign have things like time and date stamp, word count. It detects plagiarism by referencing it against a database of student papers that have been turned in, and also things that pop up on the internet. It gives you a percentage of the match, also a comparison with the source, and then shows a link to the source as well. Next slide, please. So Turnitin is very much like SafeAssign, but it also includes a few extra things. Allows for comments, but also checks grammar, spelling, sentence structure with an explanation, and so on. Next slide. All right, so here is the new fillable academic integrity form. Next slide. So you want to make sure to fill out this form, and I'm going to post a link to the form in the chat. So here's a direct link to that PDF form. It's now fillable for our new remote teaching environment. So couple of questions you might have: why fill out the form? So for instance, you might think, look, here's an instance of a student violating our academic misconduct policy. And you might think, well, I don't need to fill out the form. I'll just kind of have a talk with them, and that'll be that. In fact, it's actually a good idea and important to fill out the form, because this is the way that students get access to their due process, right? So this actually allows the student their due process rights. And it also allows you to protect and justify your own decision if you decide to go through with any sanction on it. So it's actually quite a good idea to fill out the form. It's actually beneficial to the student and for yourself. So please fill out the form, and don't just sort of not fill it out because you think that this is a better situation for the student. Next slide, please. So normally, if we were on campus, you'd fill out the form and then you'd file it in the office of Chief Academic Integrity Officer Lewis Merchant. So this information is kept separately from other records. The information does not appear on student records and transcripts. And in this new remote teaching environment, since we can't do it in person, you will be sending the file, the completed form, directly to Lewis Merchant's email address, which is listed for you here. Next slide. A few other suggestions have come up. Again, we reached out to faculty members to give us some suggestions or ideas. Again, keep in mind, these are not necessarily things that you must adhere to. Rather, these are just suggestions. Cheating, as we all know, is something that students can get awfully creative for. But imagine that students coordinate with one another. So for example, they're communicating via text or messaging apps. What do you do? One suggestion was come up with different questions for different students. So maybe different versions of a test. Another problem that I've encountered personally before also, there are these so-called studying websites, CourseHero.com, or math problem-solving sites like Symbolab. And I've actually encountered, full quizzes and tests on some of these courses before. So if you haven't done this, it might be something that you might look into, just sort of Google your name and the courses that you teach, and you will maybe, to your horror, discover that there's a bunch of stuff that you've passed out or distributed from previous semesters, right? So what do you do about these things? You know, some of these sites will take the material down if you contact them, but a lot of sites just won't do it at all. So then what do you do if they're if they're unresponsive and they don't take this material down? Well, you might try changing up exams or create questions that can't be solved just by plugging in values. So one really nice suggestion that we got from the MEC department was, so Symbolab, for instance, you'd plug in certain values and the computer just solves the problem for you. One suggestion was just come up with a problem that the correct answer isn't something like a particular computable value. So I think the suggestion was come up with something where you ask the student to explain how to set up the problem rather than telling them just plug in these values and you get this particular answer. So sometimes some of these cheating websites require us as faculty members to be a little more creative in helping to, or trying to deter plagiarism. Again, I don't think there's a one size fits all set of solutions to these things. And naturally, these will be things that will be specific to some departments and programs and not work so well for others. But these are good suggestions that we've gotten from some of the faculty members and our colleagues. And so thank you very much for those of you who reached out and let us know your suggestions. Next slide. And that's it. Please stop plagiarism.
Okay, so we're gonna just take like a 1-minute breather. I want to just thank all the presenters to this point, and then we're going to move on to the next half. I also just want to thank Janet Gonzalez. She's been doing a lot of behind the scenes, some of the heavy lifting. And so I just wanted to take a minute to thank her for, facilitating that. And so now what we are going to do is move on to grades. And we have our new presenter, Druitt, right? And he will get us through this and also introduce himself formally. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Derwin Dawkins. I represent the Registrar's Office on the committee. And amongst one of the many, many, many things that we do, one of them is that we're responsible for collecting the grades for all students from all sections. And as you can imagine, that's it's not so easy of a task. We have to make sure that all students are graded every session. There can be no grades missing at the end. So as you can imagine, the corporation of faculty, of all the instructors, it's very, very important for us to get through and make sure we get the grades collected on a timely basis. Next slide, Janet. So we basically collect grades 4 times a year at the end of each session. And usually the deadline to collect grades, it's usually within 72 hours of the last date of finals. It may vary a little bit. There may be, you may get a day or 2 extra, but it's usually within that time frame, 72 hours after the last day of finals. And if you're in doubt of any of the dates, they're published on the academic calendar. Just go to the website, search academic calendar. All the due dates are there. And submitting grades are really easy. It's done via CUNY First. And what we do 4 times a year is we send out to your emails, we send detailed step-by-step instructions on how to navigate CUNY First and how to submit the grade roster. And we also send the university's grading memo, which also details which grade you're supposed to assign when, right? So and it has very detailed instructions on what a WN is, what a W, what an F is. So usually there, for grades A, B, C, and D, there's usually there's no controversy. As Valencia mentioned, your syllabus will have the grading scale, which outlines, when each one is assigned. It's where there's usually kind of like a gray area where faculty usually have questions is when to use the WU and the F grade. Next slide. So the University Uniform Grade Symbol Glossary and Guidelines Memo, that's a mouthful. It explains, what a WU grade is when it is to be assigned. And as you can see, it's a fairly long explanation. I think they've tried to be as thorough as possible when explaining when to use WU. And I'll read it word for word. It basically says a grade of WU is to be assigned to students who attend a minimum of one class, completely stopped attending at any time before final exam week, and did not officially withdraw. And it goes on, if the students attend at least one class, or there is documented evidence of the student's participation, he or she has ceased attending the course at the end of the term, the unofficial withdrawal reported grade must be a WU. And when a student does not officially withdraw from a course and fails to complete the course requirements, the instructor assigns a W grade on the final grade roster. Right, and this we also send this to you, as I mentioned. So you'll have it for your records. So when you're going through your grading your students, you can always refer to it, right? And for an F grade, next slide, Janet. And the same thing with the F grade. As you can see, it's a fairly detailed explanation as well, right? And the grade of F, it's a failure grade given to a student who completed a course and failed, right? A student who completed a course unsuccessfully should be granted the grade of F with the culminating academic experience of the course, that is final exam, final paper, etc. W grade should never be given in place of an F and vice versa. And that's the important distinction, is that you should really not use one for the other, because there are consequences of using the wrong grade, so to speak. And so just try to pay attention to the definition and the situation, as it applies to each of your students, just to make sure that you're assigning the right grade. Also, it goes on to say that an incomplete, you should be careful when assigning F grades and incomplete grades. Another one of my colleagues will talk about when it's appropriate to assign an incomplete grade later on in the presentation. So you'll get a little bit more clarity on that also. Next slide. Okay. So this comes up all the time. Faculty, they submit a grade in error. It needs to be corrected. What we've done the last couple of years, we've tried to simplify the process. So we have what's called a grade change app on the faculty portal. Right, so you just go into the faculty portal, you log in, you fill out you click on the grade change app, fill out the form. It goes to your chair, it comes to us afterwards, and then we'll process the grade change. So we've tried to make it as simple as possible. Before, we used to have a PDF form that you had to fill out, then you had to bring it all the way over to our office. And this was a timely change, as you see the world has changed. We're now living post COVID. All grade changes, they must be accompanied by sufficient explanation, and they must get the chairperson's approval, right? So what I would suggest is to just try to have that explanation ready up front, and that minimizes the need for the grade change to be bouncing back and forth, as that just, that delays the process for getting the students the correct grade. Next. Also, as Lila mentioned, WN corrections, reversals or assignments, they may also be submitted using the grade change application. Just keep in mind one very important thing, that if you have any students on your roster who need to be assigned a WN, or WN needs to be reversed, those must be submitted and processed before you assign final grades for your students. And go back one, Janet. All right, and this is no, go for it. You can go for it. And this is just took some screenshots of where to find the grade change app. So if you log into the faculty portal, and you click on student engagement. Highlighted there in yellow is the Grade Change app, and go next. And it's basically divided into 3 sections, right? It's the student information that you put in, and basically employee ID emails. The second section is the course subject, course number, course section, and the correction to be made. The from grade, the to grade, and when the class was taken, and also the explanation of why the grade change is being requested. And there's an important note at the bottom. There are certain grades that cannot be altered. W's and WNs, they cannot be altered using this particular application, and they can only be changed via appeal, right? And any grade that is moving more than 2 grade levels, more than 1 grade level, I'm sorry. So for example, a C to an A or D to a B, something like that, then that is always subject to a little bit more scrutiny, right, when that happens. So what I would say is just make sure your explanations are clear and they're thorough, and explain exactly why there's a need for grade change. And then at the bottom of the form, you sign your name and you put in your department, and then your chairperson, it will be routed to your chairperson, who will decide whether to approve it or reject it. And I think that's basically it. All right, thank you.
We have one question. What are we doing for students requesting NG no grade due to COVID-19?
So that was a policy just for the spring semester, right? So for this fall 2020 and for next spring 2021, we're back to using regular grades. So we're no longer using I assume they meant the NC grade, CR/NC grade that was in effect for spring. So that was just for spring 2020.
Great. Okay, no more questions.
I have a question,
Okay,
Josephine. May I ask it?
we will let you ask your question. Yes, go ahead.
I didn't understand when the presenter said something about the WN grade has to be done ahead of time. Ahead of time of what? Of regular grades?
No, so before you submit your final grades,
Yeah.
because what happens, just a little bit of the background. What happens, the students need to have a WN either reversed or added, and sometimes the professor waits till the very end, right? And then they try to submit the final grade roster, and then after that, they try to submit a WN. And once you submit your final grade roster, then that's it. The books are closed on your class. And then in order to get a WN grade either assigned or reversed at that point, then it involves some very heavy lifting. So if you need to assign a WN or you need to reverse a WN, then you must do that before you submit the final grade roster for your class.
I still have a ton of questions on it, because the students who receive a WN are generally the students who reported at least one time, and who then the registrar will either leave the name on the roster, but we won't be able to take attendance for them, or the names will completely disappear from the roster. But the earlier presenter, Lily, I believe, when she talked about attendance, she says that these students who appeared only one time and never again, and we consider them to be WN, they are still on our current list. Some mine are anyway, and that eventually the college will get to deleting the names or leaving them on, and then the WN automatically comes about. But how long do we wait before we realize whether these students have been identified as WN students, or do we assume that if they're still there, that the registrar missed our attendance verification form? I'm just
Okay,
confused.
can I try and clarify, Derwin, and then you can,
Yeah,
No, no.
Okay.
you can, correct me if I'm wrong. I think, Josephine, that there is a misunderstanding here
yeah,
about what WN means versus WU means, which is a very common misunderstanding. So WN should
yeah.
never be given to a student who showed up even once, who participated in any way at any time in the class. They
Oh,
should
that's a
not receive a
W-
WN.
That's
Right?
a WU. That's a
That's,
WU.
yes. So WN is for a student who has never in any way engaged in this online environment
Right,
with the class or with the instructor. That happens during the verification of attendance period.
right,
That's what you submit on CUNY first early on.
right.
And that we get, so that, and those students will be unenrolled from the class. The
Okay.
WU you assign at the end of the semester as one of the many grades that you assign, right? A through F. And those are for students who we know every semester at some point in the semester have disappeared, have stopped participating,
Yeah,
attending and participating. So they have not earned an
right.
F
Okay.
in the course. Okay, that's
Well,
the double.
Yeah, thank you, Lil. I think that makes it clear. I was confusing the WN with the WU.
Very common,
Okay,
very
okay.
common. Very
Got it.
common.
Well, I should have known by now. I'm, done it long enough to know, but for whatever reason, I just confused it right now. But
Don't
thank you
worry
so
about
much.
it. Really, we get this question every year, so don't
Okay.
worry at all.
And so soon, the college will let us know pretty soon, or whether the students who reported only once will disappear from the list, right? Or
No,
how?
if a student reported to your class even once, they
Yeah.
should not have received the WN from you. They should
Okay.
not. They have been in the class, right?
So they will remain on that list.
They will remain on your list, and at the end of the semester,
Yeah.
you will give them a WU.
I got it. Got it. Thank you. All right.
And,
Thank you.
and of course, any questions at all, just reach out to us, registrar at lagcc.cuny.edu. We can verify whether a student is supposed to be on there, if they're not on there, what's going on. So, we can work with you to try to get to the bottom of whatever is going on with your.
This is-
Yep. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Josephine, for
Hi,
your
this is
question.
Kim Lucas. I have a question.
Wait, hold on. We now want to go to the next segment, and I don't want to cut you off, but if you could put your question, if you could just hold it till the end, because I want to make sure that we can get through all the different parts. Okay? So if you just hold on to the end, we can ask, unless it's like super quick question. Which, is it super quick, or do you have a lot of parts to it?
No, go ahead. I'll wait.
Okay, that I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to head on to incomplete grade policy, and Katerina will introduce herself and begin the PowerPoint.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katerina Amandral. I'm from the Education and Language Acquisition Department, and I'm going to be speaking about incomplete grade policy. Now, the incomplete, or the INC grade, is intended for situations which arise that are beyond the student's control. So it's something that's awarded to students who have not completed all of the required coursework, but are in good standing. There's a reasonable expectation of satisfactory completion of the course. Now, what does that mean, good standing? Good standing is essentially complying with the college's attendance policy. And again, that's reference to LaGuardia's college attendance policy, and maintaining a passing average. So this is a type of student who has not completed at most 2 major assignments or 2 examinations by the end of the course. This student may request of the professor an incomplete. And again, that should come from the student, and the student should be in good standing. So it shouldn't be for a student who is at risk of failing the course. And towards that end, the INC should be initiated by the student. It should not be initiated by an instructor without the student's consent, and it cannot replace a failing grade in a course. Now, the student should work with instructor to provide the instructor with a documented reason that's satisfactory for requesting that incomplete, and then they would work together to fill out the incomplete form. Now, that form includes the deadline by which the student will complete the work. And in terms of completion, all of the work should be submitted by the semester, and that's semester, not session, following the one in which the student receives an incomplete. So for example, if a student hadn't completed all of their work for the spring 2020, they would then be expected to turn all of their work in the fall of 2020. So for us, that would be at the end of February when the fall 2 session ends, because again, it's by semester and not by session. Now, once it's been decided, well, they're going to assess. So once all the work has been completed, they'll formally assess that all the missed work has been completed. The instructor can then submit the official change of grade form to the registrar. And failure to submit the form would result in the student receiving the conversion from the INC to the FIN, which represents as an F. So thereby the incomplete would be represented as an F, with the work not being completed, or then the instructor would submit the grade change, which would replace the INC to a grade. Now, academic departments can decide courses or designate courses where an incomplete may not be given. And developmental skill courses may have different INC policies, so you'll need to check with your department on these policies. And you can refer to the college catalog for more information about the incomplete grade policy.
Please advise.
Okay. Thank you very much, Katerina. Now, any questions? We'll push them on and we will answer them at the end. One question I do see here is, can the INC request form be completed online? Can the incomplete request form be completed online? Who's good?
Well, right now, currently it's a fillable PDF that we have it as, so it's not fully online right now. We'll be seeing if we can do that some point in the future, but right now it's a fillable PDF. So you can request that from us. We usually send it out to the administrative staff in the departments as well. So you can always get the form there.
Great. Okay. So now we're going to have Vera, who's going to introduce herself. She's the chair of the Academic Appeals, and she will present her segment and also add some other things because she also was heavily involved with academic integrity and plagiarism and so on. Okay, Vera, you're on.
Okay, my name is Vera Albrecht. I'm in the Humanities Department. I teach philosophy there, and I've been on the Academic Standing Committee for a long time. I'm not anymore, but I am presenting this because I'm chairing the Academic Appeals Committee. Can you move to the next slide, please? So the Appeals Committee is a subcommittee of the Academic Standing Committee, at least so far, because we want to split up, but the Senate has been so busy for the past year that we never split up officially. So we consist of faculty, staff, and a representative from the registrar's office. We meet about twice a month and during the fall and spring 1 sessions, and about once a month during fall and spring 2 sessions. So in other words, we are a committee that meets a lot, and we have great people on the committees, and we review an average of 30 appeals per month. This can vary depending on situation, and of course these days we have quite a lot of appeals because of the spring semester, because of COVID. Can you move on, please? So this is how the process works. So the student initiates the appeals process, and he or she works with an advisor who helps the student to review their written statement and helping them organize the documentation and tell them also what sort of documentation they will need. After the appeal is signed by both the student and the advisor, it is now we're fully electronic, it's electronically submitted to the appeals committee. So the registrar's representative, that's Margaret O'Sullivan, and I think she's also in this meeting here. Thanks for coming. She compiles all these appeals. She reviews things. She adds documentation such as transcripts and attendance records and sorts them out. Some appeals are only financial appeals, some are academic appeals. So the appeals cases then are divided among us in the committee. If we are meeting face to face, we divide them, and then each member discusses the appeal they have been working on. Now it works pretty much the same. We meet on Zoom, and ahead of time, everybody receives a few appeals, and usually they're overlapping also. So the decision to approve or deny an appeal is made collectively. And usually we pretty much agree. Sometimes we actually have to vote. So after the decision is made, the student is informed in writing about the decision within 7 business days. So this is just the process. Can you move on, please? So we review also reinstatement appeals by students who were academically dismissed, and we decide if it would be worth for the student to come back, or if it would really be disadvantage if they came back because they took so many courses and their GPA is that low. If students can document that extenuating circumstances prevented them from successfully completing the semester, then we change a grade, such as an F grade, an incomplete that was turned into an incomplete F, or any other earned grade, such as D, into W. So extenuating circumstances means that something happened to the student in their private life. And you know, our students, they have a lot of things happen to them, right? And then in that case, if they can do this, then we approve. And it is also so that sometimes we have students who just appeal that 1 F grade, but they don't really want to have that B grade changed. If we find that the circumstances are extenuating, then the student actually has to have all grades changed. Now, again, we either approve appeals or we deny them if we don't think the documentation is sufficient, or if the documentation doesn't support what the student has been claiming. Of course, we rely heavily also on attendance record as to whether the attendance record supports the claim of the student. If they said, well, in mid-March, this and this happened, but then they actually attended all the way till May, then we don't think the claim is supported. Now, we also table appeals if we think that there is the student has a good claim but didn't submit the documentation, and we believe that the student can submit documentation, or we table it because the student actually asks for a better grade, and this of course has to be reviewed by faculty in that field. So we send the appeal to the chairperson with the request for, having someone either look over the exams and papers and assignments or regrade assignments if necessary. Can you move on, please? So now, if a student never attended, and this goes right back to this WU, WN, or F grade. So if a student never attended the class but received a WU grade, we do change the grade to WN. So we look at the attendance roster. In this case, we decide that the faculty actually made a mistake. So for this reason, it is very imperative that attendance is taken accurately, that students aren't mistakenly put in as present when they're actually not present, or in the online environment that they marked online when they in fact never really participated at all in the online course. So it's very important, and for the student it can make a big difference. I mean, it makes a big difference for students for many reasons, including financial aid. requests for changing passing grades, as said, are usually forwarded to the department. And one important thing is appeals have to be filed timely. That is, they have to be filed by the end of the semester the student is enrolled, following the semester for which the appeal is filed, after, if the student hasn't been registered. So there are these cases when a student might still file an appeal for semesters back and the student has not been back yet. In that case, the student can still file the appeal, for example, for spring 2017 semester, and the student has not been back since. Move on, please. That's it. Okay, here's the Wellness Center.
We have a question for you, Vera.
Okay.
Can the student submit the appeal? Is there a specific email?
Yes, there is. So the student has, the student should look at the web. It's actually on our website, the form. So the form to appeal, file the appeal, and the instructions to file the appeal are together in one file. So when the student files the appeal and reads the instructions, there's an email. It's actually appeals@LaGuardia, or I'm not sure if I'm saying this correctly, correct me, but I can put this in the chat. And the student directly sends the appeal to that email. Yes, so the student files the appeal, but the student technically, the student can file the appeal without consulting an advisor, but we strongly recommend that they see an advisor, because once they file an appeal and it's denied, that's it. So if they just fail to submit stuff that is important for an approval, the advisors help the students with that. But the student can do it completely online. So there's an email, and I think maybe Margaret, can you do me a favor and just put the, if you're still here, put the address, the appeal address into the chat. Yes.
And Vera, another question I have is.
Thank you, Margaret. It's right there. Academic appeal. Thank you. Academic appeal at lagcc.cuny.edu. Thanks, Margaret.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm sorry.
So Vera, one other question I have, and probably from your other hat, is, am I correct in saying that Turnitin is a CUNY product and SafeAssign is a Blackboard product?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I think Lila is the one who would know this better than I do. But I think CUNY has a contract with Turnitin.
Right.
And there was kind of, I heard that there was the rumor that they were not renewing the contract with Turnitin. So
Lila, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I haven't heard anything about this.
Okay.
You mean about CUNY discontinuing it?
Yes, about CUNY.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, Turnitin is definitely still a CUNY product, but we'll follow up on that because someone had a question about.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. So any other questions for Vera? All right, so we have Janet. Do you want me to take this slide or are you going to take this slide?
No,
Okay,
no, you can take-
so Lou, go ahead. Go ahead, Janet.
So I'm Janet Gonzalez. I represent Natural Sciences. I don't represent the Wellness Center, but I'm stepping in for Luann because she can't make it today. So if you feel that any of your students are unraveling emotionally under stress for any reason, please send them to the Wellness Center. The Wellness Center is not for faculty, even though we may be unraveling, but the Wellness Center is not for us. So please send them to the Wellness Center. It includes counseling, crisis intervention, workshops. They also have telehealth counseling. So if you have to send them, this is the information that you can use. Thank you.
So when we are going to have this PowerPoint, and also the video will be available, but here's our website. And on our website, you will find things like the forms, a list of committee members, So feel free at any time to explore that. If you go into My LaGuardia and you type in academic standing, it will populate there. So I know that we have Louis Merchant in the audience, and I don't know, Louis, if you want to add anything or you don't. Silence means you don't want to add anything. If there's something that we missed, feel free to join in. So let's see. Okay, so I think, okay, so now we have time to open up the floor to any questions that you might want to ask to the committee. Before we do that, I just want to thank the committee for their amazing work. Similar to what Vera said, we meet twice a month, and this is never done by one person. This is an amazing committee members that contribute and, you know, give lots of contribution to the college. So I just want to thank them personally. So does anybody have any questions? We can unmute you and you can feel free to ask
I have
if
a
it's
quick
related
comment.
to this. Oh, hey, Louis, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good. Would you like to add anything? Maybe we missed or just something?
No, I just wanted to say that I think you did a fantastic job. All of the presenters, it was very informative and was also very helpful to me. I think his name is McFarland that did the piece on academic integrity. Again, as the integrity officer, I was extremely impressed. The only thing I would add is in defining what are the causes for engagement in academic integrity violations. If you think in terms of any student that has an unfair advantage, and that can be defined in many ways, but if you place your other students at an unfair advantage when it comes to their grade, then that's also some of the foundation for academic integrity violations. But again, I think you folks did a fantastic job. I was just here to support you.
Thank you. We're really happy to have you, and thanks for your comments. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And we'll have you in one of our meetings soon.
No problem.
Thank you. Anybody, any questions?
Kim Lucas has a question.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. I just had a quick question. I'm sorry, I missed part of it because of the technology issues, but my question, I have a student, a deaf student who works with me. I'm the advisor. And I think I missed the class. I don't know how much I missed, but excuse me, the interpreter is correcting. The student has missed a number of class and I'm not sure how much. So the professor emailed me and the student said the student has only showed up once or twice. So I'm not sure what that means for that student.
Okay, who on the committee wants to answer that?
I can answer that. This is Vera. I would say that in that case, if the student hasn't shown up a lot of times, you should recommend to see their advisor. Now, I understand you are the advisor, right? Are you the advisor?
Yes, yes, I'm the advisor.
Okay, so for everybody else, I would recommend to send the student to the advisor. If you are the advisor and the student doesn't look like they're passing, you should see if it's advantageous for them to get a W. In the worst case, if they do file an appeal and it is successful, they end up with a W grade. And that's after all this effort, after filing the appeal, and that's not even for sure. So I would recommend to withdraw from the class. Of course, here you have to check if they are if their immigration status allows them, because students on certain student visas, they cannot withdraw from the class because then they lose their student status, and in the worst case, they may be deported. So keep that in mind. Also, some students depend on financial aid, and their particular financial aid does not allow them to withdraw. So in that case, they will have to stick it out, even if they know they're not passing. But this is for most students, if they missed so much, and if it doesn't look like they're passing, it's better to just withdraw. Some students, if it's for medical reasons, they can also file for medical leave of absence, which is a little different, has different implications, but that's another option if it's for medical reasons. But if for some other problem, I even recommend that to my students. And even, especially last semester, for example, I'm sorry that this answer is so long. It's last semester, students were already stressed out because of the COVID situation. So then they come to me and say, okay, I missed all these weeks, but I really want to make up. And I'm telling them, look, if you're already stressed out, now you're trying to make up 3 weeks in a difficult course, that's going to stress you out even more with the, little chance of success. So I say in most cases, recommending withdrawal would probably the best way.
And just to add to that a little bit, Vera, for faculty who you may notice your students have, maybe abandoned or semi-abandoned the class, right? You may want to, talk to them about, getting a W instead of a WU, which is punitive, because it affects your GPA and it will affect your academic standing. So just to weigh those options.
I do have a question if you're finished with that.
Kim is saying, I just have one more thing to add.
Yeah.
So I did think about what you were just saying, but I've now had 2 professors contact me about that student's absences, that there have been so many. So I just thought that was interesting that the professor would contact me if they wouldn't just go ahead and put down the WN or the. I've been trying to contact the student myself and have not been able to get through. I've heard nothing. But finally, I got an email just today, this morning. That's the first communication we've had.
So
can I just quickly answer that? There's a quick answer to this. We cannot, in the middle of the semester, give a WU. This is at the end of the semester we give this. And there is a deadline by which they can voluntarily take the W. So this is something, this is out of our hands. And I had students I recommended withdraw from the class, see your advisor, and they just stick around. And in the end, I have to give them the WU.
Real quick, it's not a grading policy, but it's related to advising. So the reason why you might have seen faculty contacting you about this student is because faculty are encouraged to use the intervention option to contact the student's advisor anytime they have disappeared or they are in danger, real danger of failing the class because they have not submitted the work. So faculty have been using that intervention option for that reason. This is what the advising council has recommended to faculty to use. And so any faculty here who doesn't know about this option, I'm more than happy to explain it. This is more of an advising question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, my question goes to Leila. If I understood correctly, because of the attendance, if a student comes to class, but he doesn't participate, his name is there, not even his picture, or he doesn't turn on the camera, you think he's there, he never participates, should you mark him offline? Or that's the question, because
yeah, very good question, Rosa. I think it's very hard right now to determine what participation means. That is what we are all kind of grappling with. Right. So I think the recommendation from CUNY is to use a multi-metric system. So participating or not participating in a synchronous meeting can be one metric by which you measure. But for
Right.
instance, if a student does not participate or even does not attend the synchronous meeting, but has submitted work, right? Has submitted assignment, has submitted homework, that is another form of participation. So that student has engaged in a different way in the class. So we kind of, I think the CUNY policy encourages a faculty to, rather than narrow, to look at participation / attendance in a multifaceted way. So we need to give students different ways in which they can show participation. So that's what I would look at. If a student does not talk, does not even show up to the synchronous meeting, right? But they submit the work, they have participated, therefore they have attended, quote unquote, under these circumstances, the course. Now, Luke has a question. Did I answer the question, Rosa?
Yeah, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure if I'm a lab supervisor, students have to come for 2 hours. And if this student comes, his name is there, he doesn't say a thing, he doesn't do anything, but that's it. We don't have any more activities to follow up.
Then
until
that
the
student
next
was
week.
not under your metrics, that student
Yes.
did not participate. If that student has not submitted the work they were supposed to submit,
Right.
neither did they engage you or the class in a meaningful way, that is not participation, non-attendance.
All right, thank you.
Luke had a question about lateness. Luke always has funny questions. I am not sure how you would count attendance as late in an online environment. Luke, I think it just doesn't make a lot of sense that a student is 20 minutes late to a synchronous meeting. That's not how we measure attendance or participation right now. So that's why there's no late attendance. Late assignments, that could be part of the syllabus policies. What happens, how flexible an instructor is with assignments, right, being late. But in terms of attendance, I don't think that the remote learning environment kind of entails, lateness.
Even for synchronous meetings?
I do not believe so. No, I think synchronous, it depends on the faculty's policies, right? But even in a synchronous case, if a student has shown up, they have attended. Yes, I think because it's so much more, attendance is so much more complicated, and it really is about engaging in some way with the course academically, right? I think, lateness is not, a factor. So, that's why I don't think it's part of it.
Well, in thinking about the last question that Rosa was asking, and I guess the two are related, the question I asked also, there are plenty of students that show up to class when we're conducting class in person and sit there the entire class time and don't say a word. And we mark them present because they've attended, because they were there. So why would that be any different now?
Yeah, why would there be any different now? That's right.
So there are students that show up to my synchronous class and they don't say a word, they don't participate in the discussion, but they attended, they were present, and I mark them present. Is that not the right approach?
You can decide, right? If a student comes to class, right, and they don't say anything, they don't engage with the conversation or anything that's happening, and also they do not submit any kind of work, right, online on Blackboard and so on, under the new guidelines, right, this would count as non-participation, therefore non-attendance. You have the right, in other words, you don't have to, you can give them attendance, but based on the new guidelines, this is where I think the silver lining is in a way. You have the right as faculty to say, it doesn't matter that you just showed up with a black mark, you have not in any way academically engaged the class, synchronously or asynchronously, right? Therefore, you're not getting attendance credit. You have the right to say that.
Thank you.
But wouldn't also, if you put that in your syllabus,
right,
saying that this is how I count class participation, that means that they have to be at some point active, contributing. So I think that since the syllabus is the contract, maybe we need to make sure that that would be included. Again, these things are sometimes they're a thin line, but that's how I would possibly think of
And-
handling it.
May I just comment on that?
Sure.
Josephine. So to follow up on Rosa's question, which is a really good point. However, now that this semester we've been notified that we will be observed. Well, when we are in person in a classroom and we are delivering in-person instruction, if we don't encourage all of our participants to engage in our lessons, we are the ones who are, at fault. We are the ones who the person observing us will say, well, you did not call on all the students. You did not make your lesson feasible enough for everyone to participate. So am I not right that it's not necessarily on the students' end to participate? They can show up and they can sit there. We know that they're there. They're on the other side of the computer. But is it not also upon us to engage all of them to be sure that at some point in our synchronous lesson, especially synchronous, that we not make sure that we include all of them, that we ask them?
So
what do you? Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be in my opinion. I don't know if we have any chairs still here, but this is a whole new environment. And
Right.
I think that sure, if we can be creative professors and somehow engage our students, but that might not happen. I mean, I know like in the real world, when I've been observed, sometimes my students have acted funny that day just because they know there's some outside person. So in the perfect world, sure, we would love to be able to engage them and have them participate, especially while we're being observed, but it might not happen. And I think that's the kind of conversation we need to have with the chair and maybe with the provost, because that's it. That's like bigger than academic standing.
Right.
But that's, again, my opinion. If there are any chairs here or anybody else wants to comment or add,
I only brought it up because we will be observed. And
absolutely. Absolutely.
So these might come up, these questions, these observation points might come up as people are observing us. I don't know. I'd like to know more about that.
In my synchronous classes, I usually engage with the students through calling on them.
Right.
If you have a student who is non-responsive or they're not participating,
right,
take note of that. And then maybe the next class I'll call on them, or that class I'll call on them to make sure that they are attentive and they are actually in the class.
Right.
I have had incidences where I've called on students and they don't respond. So it's as if someone's just sitting there. Then through Zoom, I'll put them in a waiting room and I'll take note of that.
Just a quick follow up with what Alex said. Unfortunately, Josephine, this is beyond our scope. The Academic Standing Committee does not deal with these questions. If you have questions, observation is very confusing right now for most faculty. Both those who are observing and those who are being observed.
Right.
In both capacities. So there are information sessions that you probably saw about observation, and I would really have this discussion with your chair.
Right.
If you have
Okay.
questions and worries.
Yep. Sounds good, because it seems to me that it lies on both ends, the instructor as well as the student.
And also, if I could just add, there are other ways to engage your students. Like you can do a poll where they're participating, but maybe they're not, participating through their camera. So you could do like a poll everywhere, or you could do things where you're, there's something called Kahoot, where you could find out if they are understanding what you are, the lesson. So, that's like a whole other note, and totally what Lila said is correct. This is like beyond us, but we could brainstorm together as faculty to think of ways that, to help us as faculty in the teaching environment to engage students that are not engaging, especially if we're being observed. There's
And
just one
Kahoot,
thing.
if I may, I'm sorry.
Yes. No, go ahead.
I use Kahoot in nursing. And the good thing about it is that you can set up the questions the way you want. You can make it like a game, sort of like Jeopardy or something. And it does keep the students really engaged. you know, and being in this online environment, you can lose them very easily. So something, you know, that gives them a little, you know, kick, and they have to be involved, and, you know, if they feel like they're playing a game or something.
Right.
Yeah, so I have used it in nursing, and it works out pretty well.
Now,
Yeah, I like Kahoot.
Yeah, and then only to conclude on this discussion, yeah, I just felt that it's unfair to say that we're going to automatically mark them absent or non-participate, you know, because they're not saying anything, that we're just going to assume that they're not there. I think that would be unfair, because it does rely on us too to have to make these students participate. So it's not just fair that they sign into the class, they are there, but they're not participating, and so on our end we're going to say, well, okay, then no, you know, they're absent today, they're not in attendance. That wouldn't be fair either for the students. So I think we have to assume the responsibility that as instructors we have to make sure that they are included, that they are at some level participating. That's the only concern I have, that I don't want us to leave here to say, well, they're not saying anything to us, they're not asking questions, they're not contributing to the lesson, therefore we are to assume that they're not there. Well, what if they are there and they're just not able to do these functions? It's up to us to integrate them and to make sure that they participate. That's the only thing that I'm worried about. You know.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Josephine. And then again, at the end of the day, it's going to be your teaching philosophy. But
Right.
if you're going to be a stickler about that, then you need to really put that on your syllabus. So a student can say, oh, okay, I need to do this, because if not, I'm not getting that 10%
Right.
you know, participation. So it definitely is.
Exactly. It
Alex,
falls on
there's
us.
there's a really good question related to credit, no credit, which I think Derwent, I think I know the answer.
Yeah,
but I
that
think
was me,
Derwent-
Lila.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the reason why I was asking, I know last semester we did encourage the students to, you know, not encourage them, we did advise them about the options. And so that's why I was asking if it was just an option for last semester and we're just not continuing on with it moving forward.
Yeah, that's correct. It was just for spring.
Okay,
But the question is, Derwent, can we change that grade
This was
now?
my question.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry,
It
Jeannie.
was Jean's
So there was
question, and I think that's a good question.
situation with a student who received an F in a course, and it came out kind of after she was encouraged to change that to select the no credit option. And it turned out just circumstances having to do with military service. It looks like she really should have been given the opportunity to take an incomplete and complete her coursework. And the instructor agreed to this and, you know, tried to put in a change from the F to an incomplete, but we can't do that because she had taken the conversion to no credit. So my question is there any way through some sort of appeal, or is there any mechanism to change this NC grade?
Okay, I have not dealt with anything like this because, again, it's very unusual because the NC were only last semester. But if the student had, you know, I mean, as you say, military service, and it was really impossible for the student to do so, the student could ask, and I'm sure we would consider this just as we would consider that the student can change an F grade to a W grade, but we cannot change to an incomplete grade because that is a thing that the instructor and the student have to agree on.
They do, though. The instructor and the student do agree at this point.
But the incomplete has to be requested by the student. The professor cannot.
Right.
Katerina.
But they both agree to it at this point in time. It's just that we cannot put through a grade change for an NC.
Right. So Jeannie, so you're right. So you're not going to be able to use the normal process.
Right.
So in the CRNC, you know, on the rules and regulations surrounding it, there's like one line that provides for this after the student chooses one or the other, that it says it may be appealed. They don't say how, they don't say what the process is, they don't say, there's nothing, there's just the one line. So if you reach out to us, we'll see what we can do in terms of maybe getting an appeal in for that student, because it's clearly there are extenuating circumstances.
But they would reach
that
out
student.
through the academic standing committee for that?
No, they would reach out. They would reach out to the registrar's office, probably to the appeals thing, and make a point also that I would think the process should be that the instructor changes, files a grade of change of grade. It's not possible.
It's
the
not-
regular, it's not possible. That's the point.
Right, not through
Not
the normal
possible.
process.
Do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So who would they reach out to? Either the instructor or the student on?
Okay, I suggest that the student reaches out to the appeals committee.
Okay.
And gets a letter from the instructor that the
instructor agrees to the proposed.
The instructor agrees, and if Margaret is, it would be very unusual, and the student make this clear that this is an unusual appeal, and yeah, that we just
So
see
lots
what
of
we can do.
documentation.
Of course, documentation, but importantly also, if the student wants to change to the incomplete, that in itself needs documentation and the agreement by the instructor so that we can work something out with the instructor.
Okay, I appreciate the answer. Thank you for spending the time on it.
Okay, no problem.
I have a quick question about incomplete as well.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
So I asked the question in the chat, but I know like multiple students who are very good students, but who had to stop attending class for some time. And obviously they're not going to pass the class with the grades like they're hoping to receive. They're probably good students like GPA 4.0 or like very high GPA. So in this case, can we give them an incomplete, although they are likely to pass the class, so that they can pass the class with the grade they wish to receive, or they have to just give up and then request for tuition refund?
So Tamara, for the incomplete, they're supposed to be in good academic standing and have no more than 2 missing assignments. And then they should request it of the professor to have that incomplete. So that would be something to consider, to encourage students to be aware of the incomplete, but to know the policy around it, which is that it's not necessarily to replace the F, but rather to finish up on assignments that they have left to complete, like so no more than 2 major assignments or 2 major exams, and then kind of be in good standing that way. So that would be something to consider.
So in other words, I think what Katerina is saying, Tomaron, is that incomplete is exactly for students who would not be failing. If a student is about to fail a class, they're not supposed to get an incomplete, right? In good standing means they would not be failing a class, but they have not completed maybe 2 assignments. So it might actually be the case, but remember that the student has to initiate that process. You can make them aware of it, but they have to kind of initiate that process, and then you have to go through the paperwork.
Yeah, thank you. That clarifies well. Thanks.
Yeah, that works. I think that's a really good answer. So we are at the 4:29 mark, and I believe that we are done at 4:30, unless someone has a really pressing question. We will answer one more. If not, again, this will be available. We are going to put this on a YouTube video, and also our PowerPoint will be available. We really appreciate all of your questions. Remember, everyone's working together here, and you can always reach out to your, you can reach out to the committee. I'm sorry, I'm just like, after so many hours, I think we've all had Zoom burnout, but you can reach out to everyone should have a representative from their department, and I hope you know who that is. And we did show that in the very beginning. And Again, it will be in the PowerPoint, and I thank all of you. Does anybody from the committee want to add anything before we sign off? Or does anybody have a question? Otherwise, I thank all of you and I wish you lots of luck. It is definitely a challenging environment. And again, reach out for all of those questions that you want answered, whether it be from us or from the provost or whoever else, your chair. So, but thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you back at LaGuardia soon. Well, no, sort of soon, right?
Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you, Alex.
Oh,
Bye.
bye. Everybody did a great job.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'll send you the
Thank you.
minutes, Alex.
Okay. Thanks.
Will
Bye.
you be sending us the PowerPoint?
Yep, that's our next job. Yep.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye,
Bye.
guys. Take
Bye.
care.
Oh, look, beautiful.